All right, guys. Well, we are here today. Another episode of Energy Bites. Bobby is, I believe, in Oklahoma City at the Women's College World Series. So I hope he's having fun. That sounds like an awesome experience. And so, but he's not here with us today. But our guest is Cam Sinclair, co-founder and CEO over at SmartChain. How are you doing today, man?
Good, mate. How are you?
Doing fantastic.
Fantastic.
It's Friday, so ending the week in the afternoon in the studio. When I could be doing much more monotonous and laborious tasks of data cleansing and stuff is a welcome a welcome interrupt. So,
well, it's your daughter's birthday, man. So hopefully we can get you home to say
yes, he turned 6 today. So
was it a he?
Oh, yeah,
sorry,
it's my son.
bad. Yeah.
No worries, man. You remembered. So that's all that matters. That he shout out to Case. Happy birthday, buddy.
Happy birthday.
Turned 6 today. Crazy. He's going into first grade. So anyway, how we doing? SmartChain.
Yes. What is it?
So we'll get into what SmartChain is, but tell us about Cam first.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, I can give you a quick bio. I'm born and raised in New Zealand.
No way.
That's right. Yeah. What gave it away? Yeah. So born and raised in New Zealand, half in Auckland, which is in the North Island. And then I did my college engineering degree down in Christchurch. And after that, I was a professional weightlifter for a year and a half, which was fun, right? I made a run at the Commonwealth Games. And then after that, I quit and moved over to Calgary working with Schlumberger. So that's where I did all my field career as a MWD directional.
How did you go from
you didn't expect that one, did you?
One side of the world to the other in a completely new industry and doing something completely different?
What, man? I mean, New Zealand is a great place to live. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of just career perspectives, it's just a really, really small place.
Yeah.
So I love New Zealand. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to retire there, but as a place to have a job, it's not necessarily ideal. In fact, the country just generally encourages young people to get away, go see the world. So yeah, I spent some time overseas, and then I settled on Canada. I got into the oil and gas industry because it's just this fantastic merging of industry and resources, right? Just the amount of money that's involved in this industry is spectacular. But you've also got this really cool can-do attitude, tech forward. You feel what I'm saying, right? So I felt a calling to the oil and gas industry. New Zealand's medium on oil and gas, I should say. But certainly I jumped at the opportunity to get out of there. Someone recommended Schlumberger to me, so I pursued that. Originally, I was supposed to be going into the Gulf of Mexico. But then at the last minute, they called me up and said, "Hey, how about you go to Calgary instead?" And I said, "Cool." Is that
freeze your ass off up north instead of
I didn't know where Calgary was. I said, "Hey, is that a land location offshore?" And they're like, "You should look at a map." And that was it. Yeah. And then 3 weeks later, I was in Calgary. Yeah. And then after that, I was 18 hours north. So I spent most of my time out of Fox Creek and then over like Fort Liard and things like that.
What were you? What did you break out in?
So yeah, it was MLWD. So I was doing mostly like nuclear work with all the operators that were up there. All the logos that were there when I was there in like 2012, 2013, most of those logos have gone, right? And there's new guys up there now. They're still drilling away. But yeah, as I say, I did LWD, MWD there, touch of directional work, and then I was field service manager. So that's when I got my first taste of the office. Loved it. And then in that time, I found a nice Houston girl. And so she was calling me down to Houston. And so I found a way to move down to Houston to work on their R&D department. So working on the various downhole tools and things like that.
What a nice, that's a very happy pairing right there. Right?
It worked out really well. Yeah.
Houston's a good place to be if you're in the energy business.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can't take a Houston girl away from Houston for too long.
Nope.
So she was very supportive. She came to Calgary after a couple of times, but after all, she made it pretty clear that she wanted to come down to Houston. So I did that.
She missed the humidity, huh?
There's a funny story about that. Like I realize this might be too much information, so you can cut this if you want. But I love the story about knowing your customer, right? I spoke to Emily about hey, you should come to Calgary. The Canadians are really nice people. We'll stay in a nice house. You get looked after. There's all these great people. And she was humming and hawing, and she didn't like the temperature, but she came up because she's a good sport. And turns out she loved it up there, right? And it wasn't because of any of the reasons that I had. She's got really like long sort of Italian hair. And
no frizz.
No frizz. That's exactly right. Yeah. She up in Calgary, she woke up in the morning. Every day is a great hair day rather than the nonsense she has to deal with down here. So yeah, as I say, I didn't pick that. So that's a good lesson for knowing your customer, right?
Yeah. No, I woke up way too early this morning for no reason. And so I decided to go on a run this morning, and I went outside and was greeted by that wet blanket of Houston humidity. And I was like, why am I doing this?
But don't get used to it.
No, it's a weird thing. I was born here, so but then I moved, grew up somewhere else, and came back. But one of the things I will always remember of Houston is the humidity. But it's weird because it's like if I go to a dry climate now, my whole body hates it.
Yeah,
my sinuses freak out. Like I can't go to Vegas or Denver, no less Calgary, for more than a couple of days, and my body like. It's just, I'm like, this is dumb because this is a beautiful climate, but my body is so used to it.
I want to go back to Houston.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It could be worse. I like it down here. It's a nice place.
Yeah.
Like shit gets done here. It's good. It's really good.
For sure.
So yeah, man, after that, I did my time in R&D out in Katy, and then I moved over and did service quality, and then sort of...
The 199?
Yeah, corner 99. Yeah, exactly. Great facility, great people over there.
That's awesome.
I had a lot of fun. I really got into it. That's where I got the bug for like just sort of engineering, design, things like that. I dabbled in software at that point, working on Schlumberger's drilling offering, right? Drill ops and drill plan, which is good. And then they moved me back into operations for a little bit there. And then I had to work on their SAP deployment, which was...
Hooray.
Yeah, all right. But funnily enough, I'm actually using a lot of the experience I got there now, which I never thought I would do. But yeah, here I am. So that was actually pretty good. Then after a while, honestly, I saw the writing on the wall. I wanted to be able to diversify my career. So I pushed pretty hard to move into SLB's real digital development division, right? I call it D&I. And then after a long time of badgering, I managed to get over there, and I worked on their digital data foundation for drilling. And I did that for about 2 years as a product manager, which was great, really insightful. And honestly, after a while, I thought, hey, I want to do this myself, right? I want to work at my own speed. I want to make my own stuff. And so I jumped ship, and here I am.
So what was the kind of, I don't know, light bulb defining moment for you when you were like, hey, there's this process that I've been doing or I've done that's really broken, and I think there's something to be had here.
You know what? I've always had this bug, right? Like the main reason I moved to North America was because this bug was like deep down inside me. And I sort of got comfortable through COVID, right? Everyone sort of hunkered down. But I had a buddy of mine who said, he's like, he had this moment. He has this line. He goes, do you want to be an entrepreneur or a wantrepreneur? Right. And I'm like, oh, that's a good line.
Yeah, so it cuts deep.
Deep, right? Yeah. And so I had that in the back of my head for the longest time. And then I had this opportunity to meet up with an older gentleman named John Hansen, who had recently sold a company like IDS. He sold this reporting company to Schlumberger, right? And he was there as, I guess, sort of a transitionary role.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they're paying him to stick around. And I just made friends with John, right? And he was starting this new company, or he had this sort of dormant company, which is mostly an idea, but he'd started sort of playing around with it, called SmartChain. And he told me about it. His original perspective was based on his own personal experience. So he'd come up with this idea in 2016. During his time, he had been operating this small company called IDS, which offered reporting services to drilling contractors, right? And there had been more than one occasion when he'd sent a bill over to the drilling contractor and it didn't get paid, right? There was nothing wrong with the bill. It was everything was fine. But for whatever reason, the customer didn't pay it. And more often than not, it was because someone was on vacation, we lost your invoice. And this had put real strain on his small company, right? Like there'd been more than one occasion when he had to dip into his own pocket to pay his employees, right? And this is a story as old as time. I think everybody listening to this has some kind of like experience with this.
For sure.
Right? And so I started thinking about something like, man, I've had the same experience, even working with SLB. Right. There have been times when within the same vein, like maybe I'd screwed up an invoice because for the longest time I was writing tickets. There was one occasion when, due to a poor handover from the salesperson, we had been leaving off a line, right? Like a standby line. And we went for a couple of months not charging standby to the customer. And then 3 months later, he realizes it and I get chewed out, which was not fun. But the fact of the matter is there was no process for managing this.
Right.
And so we just screwed up the invoices and that money was lost. So I started to realize that this is a pretty universal pain. And I'm thinking, hey, yeah, John's onto something. I had this sort of entrepreneur bug in the back of my head. And I said, John, do you need a guy to help you run with this, right? I can offer you a young back and an enthusiasm for life. That can I go in for this? And he said yes, and so that's where we started, right? The reality is the solution was supposed to be blockchain based, so you can hear in the name blockchain. So we originally came to market with quite a tech forward blockchain kind of solution, but we figured out very quickly that the value is not the technology. The value is, well, frankly, how you're making your customer's life easier, whether it be the vendor or the operator. So we've started to downplay the technology element. Don't get me wrong, like blockchain's cool. I'm happy to talk about that, but as going in there blockchain forward, the operator doesn't care. I can use whatever technology I want. Like what they care is that I make their life easier.
I think that's a very common kind of I don't know, it's not a flaw, but it's just a very common practice where people lead with how the sausage is made, and at the end of the day the customer does not give a shit. They just want the problem solved or the thing automated or whatever it is, right? And so that's it's a smart move on y'all's part, because I love the blockchain side of things. I'm been in crypto for a long time. I think there's a ton of applications there. That being said, especially when it's something like that kind of in technology, there's so many like trends that come and go and stuff. And it's like, if you can hit the front end of that trend, you can use that to your advantage, potentially from, fundraising, et cetera. But also there's always going to be a backside of that trend. And so if you're on that backside when everybody's ditching it or it's not in style anymore and you're still trying to push it, it's like,
you're still strapped to it, right? You're like, oh no, I'm going down. Yeah. Cause it's not the flavor of the month. Right.
Exactly.
The blockchain theme is certainly something that helps us open doors, but it doesn't close deals. Yeah. What people want to know is like, how am I going to make my invoices more accurate? How am I going to save time? That sort of thing, right? So we found ourselves leaning into that a lot more, looking for really practical applications of just contract automation. And we're always keeping a side eye on what our technology decisions, how that can help the next generation of our product, if that makes sense, right?
Well, I think that's a big thing too, right? Is it's like, even if you have a great new technology, getting scaled adoption of that technology takes years, even within one company, right? And so it's like,
start small.
Start small.
They'll pay you for just a very simple solution. Don't
solve their problems. Like that's
solve the problems.
At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to, right? So give us the SmartChain kind of elevator pitch. What is SmartChain in a nutshell?
There you go. Okay, cool.
We've caught up.
So I've sort of give you a preamble of what's going on. Yeah, as I say, our goal is to deliver contract automation templates to operators and their service vendors, right? So we like to think of ourselves as contract Switzerland, right? That is to say, we can operate as a trusted third party that can exist between the two things. So no vendor is going to trust the operator to calculate their invoice, right? And vice versa, right? No one's going to trust them to just, I'll just give you the money, just tell me how much you owe, right? So what we did was we came to market with this idea of automating contracts and sitting as contract Switzerland between operators and vendors. And we started off with our first value proposition, which is pretty straightforward, is just reduce the administration and the leakage that exists, right? And everyone's got a story about just a stack of invoices, or that one time that, for example, in my case, I got chewed out because I was filling it out wrong, or in John's case, there were delays because someone went on maternity leave and they didn't tell anybody, right? That happens all the time. Everyone's got that story. So that one's a pretty easy value case. We go in there with that one straight off the bat. The next thing we realized is, if we're able to automate the contract to the point where we can calculate what the invoice is in real time, rather than having to wait 3 weeks for invoices to come in, we can deliver real-time financial visibility, right? So now you compare your operational visibility, right? All these great dashboards and things that are out there with how much is this actually costing me, right? At this moment in time, what is my diesel bill, right? Which is really cool, right? You can start to understand these things. So
Well, that's one of the things that never ceases to blow me away is that you've got all these billion-dollar energy companies that could not tell you on any given day what their daily cost in like anything, right? And
it's all plus or minus 10%, right?
And estimates, so it's like, it's nuts when you think about other industries and how real, like think of any kind of tech industry and it's like, it's literally real time by the second, you know?
It's not the case here. No way. Yeah. Especially these field operations. Yeah.
It's a wild problem. And, you know, before I got into, well, even when I was getting into the data side, I've been on the service company most of my career, or services side most of my career. And it's literally a universal problem. Every company I've worked for, from frac to, gauges and rentals, they all have the exact same problem. And I've worked for companies that, in my opinion, went bankrupt because of that problem. You know, you can make millions or tens of millions in revenue, hundreds of millions in revenue, and still have cash flow problems and go bankrupt very quickly because, like, on frac, it's so expensive. Like I've tell people all the time, you know, like back in the day, you would order your chems and your proppant like a month ahead of time. Then you would start the job. The jobs back then would take 2 to 4 weeks. So then you're a month into the job. You order chemicals a month out. Now you're 2 months in. So you finish the job, then you send off your invoices and stuff. That's going to take, you know, even just getting them collected to submit is going to take potentially a couple weeks to a month. Then you go into the 90 to 120 payment cycle, and you're now 6 months out from when you first started spending money. And it's like that, you do that enough times, especially when you're talking about millions of dollars at a time, you can go bankrupt very quick.
100%.
And especially, like, again, all these field service companies, you know, cash flow is literally make or break. And so it just never ceases to amaze me that this universal problem has been around forever, essentially, seemingly. And nobody, you know, I can kind of see an argument on the operator side of like, okay, well, why do we need to pay people as quickly as possible? Like, you know, time value money, blah, blah, blah. However, the amount of issues that are caused by that on the back end with reopening AFEs and lost tickets and all of it, like, it is tremendous. It happens all the time for every service that every operator has. And because of that, now you have people doing double work. You have to have more people. Like, just the volume of the accounting departments and the tech side or the data sides gets so big because they're just managing the chaos. And it's like, I can buy a house on DocuSign without being there in person, but I can't get a $3,000 field ticket approved digitally. Like, how the hell is that possible?
Yeah, you're 100% right. That's exactly the situation that we're looking at right now. And I mean, we're one of our customers is a very large operator, and they're telling me that their average drilling engineer is handling something like 200 to 300 invoice approvals every day, right? Sorry, every week, not every day, every week.
Yeah.
And that approval is just one step in the chain, right? The company man's already signed the ticket, right? And it's already gone through some a person over in Poland to code it or something to that point. Just the number of steps that's involved in approving these things is frankly outrageous, right? And with today's technology, with the data that's available to us, there's nothing stopping us from taking those agreements, digitizing them, tying them into real-time data feeds, and then being able to execute that whole process.
Well, and that's the craziest part of it to me, is it's like, it's literally just moving data around, and it's the most inefficient possible way we could do it, because most of it starts at paper level, which is where everything goes to die. But it's, you know, like I said, it's like, oh, you're the most secure way we have to approve a field ticket by our company man is for him to have a stamp that he puts on it physically. And then I'm sure those never get lost or stolen. Like, and no one's ever approved a bunch of invoices that shouldn't have been approved. Like, or I can have Face ID on my phone. Like, why? It's so crazy to me.
The dichotomy right there.
Yes, it's a huge dichotomy, right? Like, yes, that made sense in 2000. Yeah. Okay, sure. But like, we're 25 years later now.
Yeah, and you've got some interesting stuff. And I'll stick with the diesel example because it's just the easiest one for people to understand. But like, the logic of even validating that invoice now is really challenging. Short of the company man going out there and looking at the sight glass,
Right.
and the sight glass is not a particular accurate thing.
No.
And I'd say, and we found that something like 1 in 5 strap sheets on the side of your tank is wrong, right? So there's no. I mean, he's signing this piece of paper, but
Right.
he's not validating the price on the contract.
He's
is
not
right.
standing over them while they're strapping.
No, man.
Yeah.
No.
He doesn't know what the contract said.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not that we can save time; it's that we can just do a better job of it.
Yeah.
We know that 7,000 gallons went into that tank, and we know that the price was this. So you get a fundamentally better approval process, and you get to remove all of those manual steps. So
Yep.
we're doing our best, just piece by piece, to pull the market into the future. But the last piece that I'm really excited about, this is the one that I really get. And I'm sorry, we can get kind of wonky about this,
go.
but I believe that with contract automation, we can actually improve drilling and completions operations, right? That is to say, we can save you time, we can reduce leakage, and then after that, we can improve your financial visibility. But fundamentally, I think contract automation will result in better contracts, right? And what is a better contract? In my opinion, a better contract is a contract that better aligns the incentives of the operator and the vendor. So you can actually get yourself to a point where the operator actually gets more for less money, and the vendor is happier because of
Right.
it, because all he has to deliver is exactly what the operator asks for. I mean, think about with rig contracts. Back in the day, you used to have this day rate. That's the best example of just diametrically opposed incentives. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like the vendor makes more money when the operator is annoyed because things are going slow, right?
Right.
So that's just crazy, right? Whereas now with contract automation, we can start putting in place real advanced performance contracts where the operator can come in and say, I really care about my go-to-bottom strategy, right? I really care about footage through this section, whatever you want. Like, they think
Right.
about what they want to achieve. And then you can put a contract associated with that. Trying to put together any kind of complex performance contract these days is a bit of a nightmare, because inevitably it's spreadsheets and
Right.
no one agrees, and the whole thing just falls apart, right? People have tried performance contract, but it turns into a fight. Believe me, I've been in those rooms, right? Where you're trying to, 3 months later, I've got my spreadsheet and you've got your spreadsheet, and we're having a fight. Neither of us can really remember what's going on.
Your NPT says 50 and mine only says 10.
Exactly, yeah. And no one can remember,
Well,
right?
and it's like, no, it's because he has 40 of that MPT.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you have that. Yeah, those are
Yeah, you blame the other
Those
guy.
are the
You blame the guy
worst.
that's not in the room.
those are the worst meetings because no one wins, right? Like,
No one wants to be there
No.
either. Yeah. So we're able to create this financial source of truth on the fly, right? But we're able to calculate these performance clauses on the fly as well, right? So if you want to really dig into your footage rate, if you really, as I say, the go to bottom rate is, so the go to bottom procedure is a really good one. We can map out what the go to bottom procedure is, put that procedure into a contract, and then use the real time data feeds to map it out, right? And so we've talked to a couple of drilling contractors who are really excited about this, because they've invested a lot of money in having controls to go to bottom, and they want to be able to demonstrate this value that they've created.
now that's a really, really fascinating point, because one of the struggles I feel like from the services side is that the operator demands new technology, but they don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, man.
99% of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, how do I, as a service company, spend millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions to invest in technology if you're not willing to pay me for the technology?
Yeah.
And so now it sounds like there's something that actually kind of bridges that gap.
Exactly right. Yeah, it really is. I mean, we want to work with, as I say, we want to work with the operators and the vendors, but one of the primary advantages for the vendors is that they can better demonstrate the value that they're creating for their customer, right? And the customer's happy with it. Frankly, if it
Right.
doesn't demonstrate the value, then you don't get paid.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So yeah, we're really making that pitch on the first day. People sort of look at me a little sideways
Right.
unless you're really into this. But we found that the customers we've working with, we've always started with reducing the admin, reducing the leakage, just make it easy. And then after like 6 months to a year of working with them, they start going, oh, cool. Okay, what else can we put in
Yeah.
here for performance contracts? What index can we peg this to? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Things
No,
like
for
that.
sure.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be, right? Like I've done so many RFPs, and then you get to the end of it and it's like, oh, and if you want payment, if we guarantee you payment in 15 days, you'll give us a 10% discount or a 20% discount or whatever. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, In what world is that fair to anybody other than you?
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Or you could just pay me for the work that we did, that we agree. Like, it's crazy. But let's get into it, because I don't think enough people, unless you've really been in the weeds of this, truly get how big of a problem this ends up being, especially on the services side. Again, it's service margins are always narrow unless oil prices are just screaming. And so in my mind, this is one of those things I've looked back on a number of times with a number of the companies that I've worked at historically, and just been like, man, that cash flow piece literally is the make or break of a lot of this stuff. I told you they were going to start construction the minute we started this podcast.
Yeah, it's okay.
But it's one of those things where, like, at one of the companies that I worked for, I did a full-blown analysis on our DSO, and we were like, I'm making numbers up, so that makes it good for confidentiality and all that stuff. But I think the average time from when the job was completed to the ticket itself was being delivered to the client was like 21 days or something like that. And then from there, our average DSO to being paid was like over 120. And it's like, and this was a company that wasn't a big operation from a services perspective. So they weren't big tickets. And so you had to make sure those things, you're hitting singles all day long and bunting, small ball. But it's one of those things where it's like, no one was paying attention to it. So no one really knew, right? Like, if you don't have an accountant really hammering that, you're not going to be really, especially on the service side, everyone's always strapped. They don't have enough resources or time. And so, but we put some effort into really focusing in on that. And we were able to reduce both of those pretty significantly just by like identifying some metrics and being like, hey, these are important things that we need to put into our basically SOPs to get this done. But like, what are you seeing generally, from the market perspective on like what the average DSO is, what they should be, what you guys are able to do you have any kind of case study type stuff yet? Or?
Yeah, I've got two good examples in my head. I mean, to begin with though, I found that some companies are really hyper tuned into DSO, and what I would call DIR, days invoice received, is the time to get the invoice out, and then DSO is the time after that. As I say, like, we don't attempt to say we can get you paid faster. If your contract says 30 days, then we're not going to change that. That's not our business. But the reality is the whole thing can be done and dusted in the first day. If the company wants to sit on it for 29 days after that, that's their business. But certainly,
but even just ensuring that the invoice is going to be approvable, right? Like that is so much of the headache, where it's like you submit the invoice and then 3 months later they finally get around to it and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, that invoice got rejected because this code was wrong.
Yeah. I didn't even put that code on there.
And it's like, yeah, that's your code.
You did that.
Like,
yes, that happens all the time.
Or it's like, you gave us that code to put on there. That's the only reason it's on there, or it wouldn't be there to begin with because it's not ours.
Yeah, that's 100% right. So yeah, as I say, like, some companies seem to be really tuned into that, and other companies, honestly, it's just become this dull pain. Yeah. It's just par for the course. This is just the nonsense we have to do. I was talking to a diesel vendor the other day. He employs 3 people to just do billing. 3 people to just do billing, to navigate through all the nonsense associated with that. And then on the other side with the operators, they're just as acutely aware of this pain. Right? Yeah. They know how much time their company man is sitting inside the shack stamping tickets when he really should be walking around making sure people are safe. Right?
But the thing that I don't feel like they're as aware of are all the the hordes of accounting folks or back office people that are having to rectify and fix all of this shit. Yeah, right. And it's like they just have to keep hiring more people because they're not solving the problem. And it's like,
it's death by 1,000 cuts.
Yes,
right?
No, literally.
It's 1,000 cuts. So yeah, as I say, so I got 2 good examples for that. Like, one of our very first customer was an offshore drilling company, right? And they had been preparing their tickets, their end of month tickets manually, right, using the Excel sheet, right? And there's a lot of money going through these Excel sheets. But
every service company uses an Excel sheet.
Excel sheet. Excel is the biggest business system in the oil and gas market, and then followed closely by like Outlook. Right? And then your SMS, like Apple iMessage is probably after that, WhatsApp and stuff. So anyway, they were doing it with the Excel sheet, and don't get me wrong, it was working, right? They were getting paid, but every timesheet was different. Every approval process was different. They had very little oversight over, as I say, DIR, right? And when you're dealing with tickets as big as they were, like a 5-day DIR is a serious amount of money, right? And so the first thing we were able to do is automate that process for them. So these tickets were prepared, and there was an automated approval process that was as simple as possible. That it actually leveraged DocuSign in that case, where the stakeholders from both sides of the equation could come in and approve this as easily as possible. And the operator loved it as well. I mean, the operator saved time. Like all of a sudden the process was standardized. Everybody could see it. There was full visibility. The ticket was getting approved the day of the end of the month, right? At month ended, 1 a.m., your ticket's approved. And then now the accounting team has the information they need so they can push it out. So we were able to take that company's DIR down from like several weeks to several days at most. So that was a big one for us straight off the bat. And now we're doing some really cool stuff with them. They're actually the best example of, we did the baseline work, and now they're coming back to us saying, hey, we want to cooperate with our operator on an even deeper level to establish the single source of truth. Like, what is the NPT at the end of the day? What point are we at the AFE? That sort of thing, which hasn't been done before. And then on the other side, our first operator customer, a big outfit, they had a performance contract, right? They wanted to reward the drilling crews, and it was taking something like 130 days to calculate these bonuses because they were so complex.
No better way to incentivize a drilling crew than
to
paying
them
them 6 months later.
Yeah, that's where we were. Yeah, exactly. And so we said, guys, like, this isn't going to work. So we worked with them to help digitize their contract, to take out the more sort of soft terms, right? So there was this part of it was, where did the lateral land, right? Where did the lateral start? And I was like, okay, cool. Where's the definition for started lateral? And they say, oh, we talked to the drilling contractor for that. So I go over to the drilling contractor and I say, hey, where's the lateral start? And they say, oh, we talked to the directional guys. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I have to go over and talk to 3 or 4 different directional companies, and they've all got different ways of calculating the landing point. I'm thinking, you've got a guy from Phoenix Directional making decisions that are impacting something that's completely irrelevant to them, right? So first thing we did was get the contract to a point where it was digitizable, right? So we said, right, at this point, survey X, that's the start of the lateral, right? And that got rid of a lot of the aggravations just straight off the bat by having let the math tell you where it is,
rather
than
the numbers speak. Yeah,
I know, it's glorious, isn't it? And so all of that evaporated. And then we worked through a couple of other things. We ended up digitizing the whole workflow, and we took the process of, rather than 130 days, we took it down to really a couple of hours, right? That we can push it through. I mean, there's limitations because it's Greg Abbott wants to take his cut, but like we were able to significantly reduce the processing time. And this leads into my story about trying to create better contracts. With contract automation, we were able to improve the incentive power of that contract without creating any cost. In fact, we actually eliminated quite a lot of leakage from that as well. So it got cheaper, and they got a better service because we were able to execute it in a timely way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That was
no, and even just like the transparency side of it too.
Oh,
right?
yeah, man.
Like, especially, in 2025, where a large majority of things are already instrumented, like the data is being collected.
Yeah, man.
And instead of just having a person do it, you let the computers do it because it's instant and it's accurate.
And if everybody trusts it, then all of a sudden you can start.
When you have the agreed upon transparency in, how the data flows and where it's coming from and how it gets approved and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's never any kind of question on one side or the other.
I would say at the very, very root of it, maybe this is an oversimplification, but all a contract is just a feedback loop, right? It's about saying, you do this and I will give you this, and we go around in circles. Like, I'll be happy. And so if you can execute that feedback loop as fast as possible, people know what they need to do and they'll do more of it. You know what I mean? And you'll get a better outcome at arguably a lower price. But it's funny you mentioned the data. We came to market with those 3 points that I mentioned earlier, but point number 4 is one that sort of came about by accident. We've realized when you start tying data, like the IADC drilling report, when you start tying that to people's contracts, to their contract execution, all of a sudden people start paying a lot more attention to that data in real time. So when we first start, we always see errors, and we have quite an extensive workflow for spotting problems with data. But every single time we've deployed a smart contract, we've watched the root data improve organically, just because more people are paying more attention to it in a timely manner. So we've been able to come to the data scientists and the IT departments and say, hey, you want us to be here because we're going to incentivize people to get that rig release date right. So in 3 months' time, when you're trying to use it on a large scale model, all of a sudden you're not feeding garbage into your system.
Yeah.
Right. So the more you can bubble these problems up to your company man or your driller and incentivize them to get it right, I mean, the better all your operational decision making gets.
Now, there's a really good book called Measure What Matters, and that's literally what it's all about.
Yeah,
it's like if you can't measure it, how do you know what it's doing or what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like again, this is one of the weird nuanced things of the oil field is you've got all this data, but pretty much none of it is generated by the operator who owns the data at the end of the day. And so it's coming in all these formats and from all these sources at different times and in different styles and all this stuff. And so it's I don't envy them in having to manage all of that, but at the same time it's like it's coming in, so let's use it. Let's make sure it's good data, because that's like I have thought about this a number of times about how many machine learning models are out there probably that were based off of all this shit field data.
Dumb crap. Yeah.
Right. It's like K factors, right? In a frac fan. It's like I can make the reading say whatever the hell I want, even though what's actually happening is very different. And it's like, I guarantee you there's a million data scientists that don't even realize that there's this opportunity for human injection into the data piece of it from the field side that actually messes with all of their stuff on the back end.
Exactly. They're making absolute decisions off data that was fat-fingered 6 months ago, right? It's crazy. But
and then the guys in the field, they don't know.
They don't care.
They don't give a shit.
They don't give a go. Okay, maybe that's a bit mean. They do care, but they've got a lot of other stuff to worry about.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, it's not, they have no incentive.
Yeah, exactly.
To make, their incentive is to make it okay with the company man.
Right? Yeah, you're good. Yeah. To get the precious signature, and then you're off to the races. Right. Yeah. Your point about the operators consuming a lot of data from a lot of service vendors is really on point, right? So if you can make sure that those guys are appropriately incentivized to make sure the data is good before it gets delivered to the operator stands to benefit. So
for sure,
it's interesting. Well, we haven't released this. We haven't released this contract yet because we tend to release things in templates based on standard workflows, right? So rig contracts, bonuses, or like diesel, CNG, that kind of thing. But we've got one that we're excited to talk about, which is about a lot of directional companies and a lot of other companies produce these recorded mode data sets that are not necessarily critical to the real-time operation, right? And right now, these data sets are just being left on the cutting room floor because they're typically several gigabytes. And what are you going to do? Email it to the drilling engineer, and he's going to be like, well, what am I supposed to do with this thing? But if you can put in place an automated workflow that essentially monetizes those deliverables, right, at a price point that the operator is willing to pay, and you make it so easy that all of a sudden the service vendor is able to actually work with that.
It's free money to them, right?
Yeah, it's free money to them because they've got it already. They don't have to go through the rigmarole associated with putting it on a USB stick and mailing it over, right? Which is what we used to do.
I know. I do think the whole data transfer thing in the industry
crazy,
is
right?
Wild.
Yeah, but if you can automate the data process and put a monetary value to that data, and then transfer it into the operator, but put it in the operator in a way that they don't have to deal with it either. Eliminate all the manual handling. All of a sudden, you've just got this fantastic data set that you never had access to, right? And so we're really hoping to expand the amount of data available in to the operators and to the vendors by being able to facilitate the monetization of that data at a reasonable price point. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's, I've always thought of it from the services side, but I've never thought about the fact that, the operator is willing to pay something for it, right?
Something,
generally speaking. And so it's like, hey, the service companies want to make money as anywhere they can. So, and
with the way that AI is going, all of a sudden that was the problem with these giant data sets, right? If you'd only ever open them up when there was a colossal fuck up, right? You know what I mean? That's when you had the time to get into it. But there's a lot of value in there, and especially if you've got an AI machine that's capable of wading through all that crap, all of a sudden that data that was originally just too hard to deal with, right? It was that awful stuff. All of a sudden it becomes super valuable. You've got a lot of insights in that. And for the most part, it's untouched by the human hand, which makes it arguably better. Yeah. So that's huge. We're not necessarily there yet, but we're excited to move into that space.
That's awesome. So one of the questions I wrote down was, what are some of the kind of objections or pushback that you've kind of encountered in the industry on this side of things? Because, if you zoom out, there's like, I've done a lot of research. I almost started a company in this realm at one point in time. Cool. So, because directly due to that company I was working at and just seeing how ridiculous, like, oh, your invoice process is me dropping a piece of paper off into a slot in some random field office and hoping that y'all submit it to your corporate office. Like, that's insane.
And the money will just show up.
And it just shows up magically, or in like
checks in the mail.
It doesn't even encompass the main pain point, which is, as a service company, I have to integrate and work with everything from literally mailing invoices with physical mail all the way to, Ariba, SAP, insert your giant enterprise ERP system here that, 90% of them run off of. And then it's like, so I have to, like, me, small 20 person, 30, 50 person service company, have to manage figuring out how to deal with all of those different things. But like the operators don't care, because on their end, all their shit's in whatever platform they're using, and their clients have to use it if they want to work with it. Like, there's not a lot of incentive on the operator side specifically around that point of it. But what you guys are doing, where it's mutually incentivized, I think makes a lot more sense. I think that's one of the reasons people have struggled to penetrate that space.
The key for us is certainly to start by working with the operators and making it clear that they stand to gain from the benefits that I've already explained.
But there's also clear benefits as a service company to using it as well.
Exactly. The value to the vendor is normally self-evident. Right. And we do not promise your DSO is going to go down, but certainly we'll simplify all the process and we'll give you a lot more visibility into the operation.
That alone.
Yeah, man. And more often than not, we actually make your life easier because we're helping you process this. And if you know that if you're able to validate that what you're doing is making your customer happier, then that's huge, right? So we typically do make a stronger play to the operator. That's where we tend to lead it to. And that's where we make the arguments around reduced administration, simplified leakage, make sure you're actually not getting ripped off, right? Ripped off, I've yet to see anyone submit a nefarious invoice, although they're certainly out there. But leakage, fat fingers, all the time. Right, that happens a lot, and then improve visibility, and then fundamentally, once you really get on the contract automation chain, making your performance contracts better, right? And bringing more performance contracts to the market, because the operators really have to be the ones leading the charge on that.
Even just the visibility, though, right? Like, I have no visibility in dropping it off in a folder in Monahans, Texas, at a field office.
Yeah, man.
Like, in that like, that's still how people do stuff, and it's like, once it's there, my guy in the field tells me he drops it off. What am I supposed to? Now I just sit and wait. I have to hope to remember in 6 months to check to see if
did the money show up.
That came.
So I was talking to an operator yesterday about his diesel spend, and with a click of a button, he saw all the invoices that were all associated to each one of his AFEs. We were able to say, you're burning 1,800 gallons per day on this particular well. You spiked over here for some reason. 1,800 gallons a day translates to what, $6,000 a day. And that's to the minute, right? And then the next day he can see how much his AFE's ticked up. So that level of visibility he was staggered. And the idea is, I have to emphasize this, like, there's enough stuff out there in the oil and gas market right now. We don't want to be another thing. We've actually got this ridiculous situation where we say, look, we don't want to have a lot of eyeballs on our dashboard. The dashboard's there because black boxes are bad, but we typically tend to deliver most of the information that we need through a text message or through just a well-timed email, and then just get on with your day. So in terms of like the training load or anything like that, zero, man. Like, we're trying to take stuff off your operator's plate. The last thing I want to do is show up and say, here, have more stuff.
Yeah, learn this new platform.
No, that's the opposite. Oh my God, yeah, we don't. That's the opposite of what we want to do. And some of my previous roles have been about, hey, what you've got there, take that away, and here, use my new thing.
Forget the last 20 years of what you've been doing.
No, even if what you're selling is better, the operators don't want that, right? So we really, really lean into business integration in a big way. And I guess the last sticking point that we've got, and we really do feel strongly about being independent, as I say, contract Switzerland, right? So to that end, we've taken no corporate venture capital. We're not beholden to any oil company, any directional company, anything like that. We're our own little outfit, right? We take that integrity really seriously. So we spent a lot of money getting ISO certified, getting SOC 1 certified to handle financials. So we really do try to come in and be like, we're a trusted partner. If the operator's doing something sketchy, we'll tell them, you know, like you can't do this, right? And so we do have to go to bat for the vendor as much as we go to bat for the operator. And I mean, that's the last part of it, is that the temptation in this is to start saying, hey, we'll take a percentage of the ticket, right? But as soon as you start,
what other people do.
It's what other people do. Yeah, it's what other people do. Yeah,
take a nice fat percentage.
The last thing you can do is
That's the best part, though. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's the best part from the services side, is being told by an operator that I have to use this system. And then the first thing that I get when I go in to use that system is I'm now being charged, because the operator is not paying to use it, right? I get to pay for the privilege of billing them in a new system that I have to learn and integrate into my workflow. Yeah.
Oh, that boils my blood. Yeah, yes. Exactly. You're the benefit of. And so, yeah, as I say, like the way we charge is flat rate. Like we believe that if we were taking a percentage of the ticket, then all of a sudden we're incentivized to bloat the ticket, right? So we just say, no, like very much flat rate. You do whatever you want to do. The bill can be $1. The bill can be $10 million. Like we're just going to sit here and we're going to arbitrate and we're going to execute on our platform. So like all those things combined to establish that level of trust and really show how we can benefit the operator has been our most successful path to market. Does that make sense?
No, that's really cool. Yeah, and man. Even just the way that y'all are approaching it, right? Like I think over the next 5 years, the way that what we consider traditional software is going to change tremendously with language models and a bunch of other stuff. And just the need for direct integrations for things, right? And so there's going to be a lot less, tab switching to this platform for this and that platform for that and this one for that. And it's going to be way more back-end driven, where everything is integrating into databases or notifications that you just get fed when you need it.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
And so that's cool. That's been, in my opinion, part of one of the biggest problems as to why we're in the position we're in as an industry, is that because people didn't want to integrate, or they had such a monopoly on something that I'm not going to give you an API to it because I don't have to.
Yeah.
Who else are you going to go use? Now that's changing.
It's changing.
Finally.
Yeah.
But I mean, the incumbents for decades did that, right? And became these monopolistic things
these walled gardens,
these very, very big walled gardens that held up a lot of potential progress for a long time, just because they wanted to sit on the data.
Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. And people were trying to trade off that in the sense of just trying to give more and more insights, right? And after a while, you just get sick of insights. Right. You know what I mean? Like I've seen there's enough charts. We're done. We're done with charts. Yes. Okay, exactly. If your point that things will become more automated on the back end and will just be executed, I mean, that's just an inevitability that's happening already, right? So we've got to get on that bandwagon, rather than trying to give somebody like another dashboard.
Yeah, well, right? I mean, meet the user where they're at, right? Yeah, like if they're working out of Excel, meet them in Excel. If they're, if they're running around and they're in the field, send them a text. Like, understand the end user and what their workflows are, so you don't have to be that new needle in their side, other tab to open, new software to learn.
And to that end, from a service perspective, you need to be willing to literally meet them in the field, right? If that's where they want to go, like these guys don't have a lot of time and they don't really want to like know what you've got to tell them. They just want to make they're willing to pay if you make their life easier. And so you go out to the field and you shake the company man's hand and you install that sensor yourself and you say, right, you're good to go, man. I'll call you tomorrow, make sure you're happy, and then I'll leave you alone. That's much more important. And I think that's something that, and I'm going to throw a bone to all the oil and gas startups right out there. So we're actually creating a nice little gang of, a nice little group of these oil and gas startups. So I mean, I'll throw at least one attaboy to Breaker 19 and
Rodney.
Well, I'm dealing with Tyler, but yeah, Rodney and then you got Alex over at Rig Concierge, right? So we're this little gang of guys. I think they're all doing it right. when you come from the oil and gas industry and you're starting your own operation, you're able to go and talk to these operators and talk to all these vendors. You can go to their offices. You know where not to put your hand. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Whereas if you're dealing with these software companies from outside the oil and gas industry, you're starting from miles behind the 8 ball because you've just got to explain to them what ROP means. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we're doing here. Like the oil and gas industry is like the military, right? Just there's so many acronyms and so many like highly specialized things. So I love working in the oil and gas industry. Working with these people is fantastic. They're a unique breed. But I imagine it would be extremely difficult to be an outside player to come in and try to offer a sort of a service.
It's been tried many, many times.
Yeah.
It doesn't ever really tend to stick, it seems.
No, yeah. And that's actually really cool, right? You get all these players. And actually, you guys are exactly the same, right? You come from the roots and then you're able to develop your own little spot. I say that's my favorite thing about the industry. It's also a benefit because it means that we're all growing from within, I suppose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
My favorite.
It's you don't have the imposters get weeded out very quickly.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
if
you're full of shit, you get spotted really fast.
You're not going to have a long career. And so that is a very nice thing for sure. Man, this has been good. Let's talk a little bit. I know this isn't y'all's selling point, but being a crypto guy, I have got to ask the question about the blockchain side of it. Is there a blockchain that y'all are actually operating off of? Is it?
Yeah, so we've bounced around on that. I mean, as I said, when we first started into it, we were really leaning into it. We started off with R3 right? We liked them because they've got a lot of fingers in the banking industry and they're ultra secure. Unfortunately, they're also ultra expensive, right? Everything needs to be run on these Kubernetes clusters, and it ended up costing us too much money. So we said, like, we can't do this. We figured that out pretty quickly. But yeah, we moved away from them simply because having them or not having having that simply did not justify the value proposition. So after that, we took a look at ourselves and said, look, we're not going to be settling these contracts in Bitcoin anytime soon. Right. So we moved to have the blockchain based solely as an indisputable ledger, right? So to date, we've been putting it on basically just a private chain, more as just a way to like do it.
No, I mean, I think that was always my hang up on crypto blockchain getting into the enterprise was it's like, okay, well, which one are you going to pick?
Yeah.
Like there's literally millions of them.
Yeah.
And then what happens if that one, fails or goes under or is a rug pull? Like you don't know. You know? And so like, it's an interesting thing. Bobby, it's really funny. Bobby and I went to this blockchain conference. This was probably 7, 8 years ago. And there was a guy that got up and asked the question and he was like, so he was just asking to be snark, like, what's the difference in a blockchain and just a shared database? And it's like, it's actually there's not a lot of difference there, especially if both sides agree on the database. And so it's like, but to me, that is the most promising, reasonable enterprise solution as well. Everyone has databases. They have people that know how to manage them. They understand how they work. It's not a new thing that's mysterious, that's constantly changing, right? Like, and so I think that's you're providing the value, which is,
an indisputable record.
An indisputable, unchangeable record that's completely documented all the way through and is transparent to both sides, right? Like,
and that's all you got right now, but it's a great place to dip your toe. I mean, lots of customers are like, no, we don't need that. Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll just automate your contracts. But we need to make sure that we're building our architecture such that as the market's appetite for blockchain increases, we're there. Like there's some really cool stuff. I mean, we're talking to Blockchain for Energy right now. They're doing some really cool stuff. They're the industry consortium. I actually really buy that method rather than having like a number of these little private chains, which are essentially shared Excel sheets, right? Or heaven forbid going out there and building yet another blockchain, which costs a fortune and is obsolete the instant you release it. So we're not doing that. Having this consortium that can operate as a medium ground between, as I say, private chains which have limited utility and heaven forbid going on sort of a public chain which comes with a whole world of risks,
Yeah.
right? I think having that consortium is a really good place to start. I think they're starting to gain some traction, which is quite exciting. So yeah, talking to Rebecca over there, that's cool.
I agree with you though. Like there's obviously a very obvious solution, especially as all this stuff gets automated.
Yeah.
Or not. So there's not an obvious solution, but there's an obvious need that this would fill in the industry, where there's just so much IoT type stuff that is billed based off of consumption. And it's like, well, you've got a sensor there, and you've move the data, and it's done.
Yeah, we're not counting sacks of Barrack quite yet, but we'll end up with a robot out there doing that eventually. You know what I mean? But yeah, as I say, like I have yet to encounter an operator or vendor that's interested in doing any of the more like advanced stuff, and that's just the nature of the market. And I'm happy to work with that for the time being. Right? When stable coins come along, sure, we'll do that. But right now, no, we're not going anywhere near that. I did hear of a really cool use case, and we're not doing this, and if someone wants to do it, I'd love to see it. But I'd love to see like certifications and things starting to get saved to a chain. That makes
a ton of sense.
Right? Yeah. If there's a solution out there that's managing HSE certifications, because I mean, it's been a while since I've gone out to a rig site and had to show them my tickets, but certainly in Canada, this is what we did all the time. You had the little,
your cards,
little stack of cards. And I mean, that was such a laborious process, and there's no way of tracking it. But I mean, that seems like a really obvious low risk application. And we would love that because you could tie that into a term in your contract. Look, all your fellas need to have active HSE training, right? And if they're missing it, then we're going to ding it.
And then on the backside, as the service company, you can only deploy people based off of that,
And so you have this sort of immutable record that's maintained by a third party, or maybe it's maintained on the consortium, that players like me, independent players, can come along, access those records, and then execute on them. Does that make sense?
I think that sounds like a fantastic idea, because I think currently there's very, very monopolistic type setup where one or two companies basically control that for everyone.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And so it's like, no, that's there's so much of that, right? And it's that should be your permanent record, so to speak, right? It shouldn't be controlled by someone who gets to make money off of that. Yeah,
exactly. And it needs to be. You need to make sure there's an incentive mechanism to make sure that it's sustained, right? You need to have it needs to be almost a public-private kind of thing, right? If it's all private, then you end up with these walled gardens. If it's all public, nothing happens, right? So it needs to be this sort of beautiful marriage of the two. And I think that's certainly the way things are going, but it's moving at oil and gas speed. So that's
getting faster by the decade.
Yeah, as I say, like the name of the game, man, is to just focus on making someone's life easier, be real cheap, and then just start establishing trust, and then you can do some really cool stuff. But if you go in there like guns blazing, blockchain, AI, everyone's like, either people sniff bullshit, right? Or they're like, this is too much for me. I don't want to have anything to do with this.
They tune you out immediately.
Yeah.
It's just noise.
Yeah. And to that end, we've actually had with that mentality, we've had some really good success working with operators that you would class as late adopters, right? Because we just go in with something really basic, really affordable. Everyone's happy. Yeah, it's been good.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we're
at time
already at an hour. So
Sorry. Yeah.
No,
this was a long one.
That's how
this was fun.
This is perfect. This is where we get into the fun random questions. So at the end, we just pepper you with some kind of ridiculous random things. But who is your favorite rugby team?
Oh, that one's easy. Oh, actually, I'll say the All Blacks, but the Canterbury Crusaders. There you go. The local New Zealand rugby team.
Perfect. You have any books that you really enjoyed or would recommend for anybody?
Yeah, I've got a couple of good ones. I mean, 0 to 1 is kind of a Bible, right? That one's fantastic. I love that one. But there was I forget the name of the author, but there's a book called Team of Rivals. It's an absolute marathon, but it's about how Lincoln navigated his cabinet during the Civil War.
Oh man, I bet that's wild.
It's really, really good, man. It's dense. It's the book that was based on that movie Lincoln.
Got it.
Right, but read the book because it's completely different. But it's that one's spectacular. But yeah, you're going to be in it for the long haul to get through that.
Oh, that's cool. All right. I wrote this down because we're talking blockchain. So outside of Bitcoin, do you have a fun or favorite speculative crypto. This is not advice.
This is not financial advice.
Just for fun.
I have a colleague who started a cryptocurrency called TAS Hub, which we've thrown a bit of money into that one. That one's a lot of fun. He's exploring, doing some pretty interesting stuff there. But yeah, you won't find that on Coinbase. That's pretty that's pretty speculative for sure. No, I love the concept of the Helium network was pretty cool. I really like that.
I almost bought a Helium miner, and I'm really kind of glad I didn't. But.
Yeah, I got one in my house. It paid itself off, but not by much.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that was generally the consensus, but it
great concept, right?
I mean, I was think about that for the oil fields, right? Like think about all those SCADA systems, all those remote areas that are running off that.
Yeah, it's all LoRaWAN. Like
off that frequency. It's not like it's introducing something new. It's just you're making money by hosting the infrastructure.
Yeah, you know what? Like if SmartChain doesn't work out, I might actually see if we can reignite some version of the Helium network for oil and gas for sort of those remote locations to leverage LoRaWAN.
Well, it's just like we have all these other consortiums where we share shit. Yeah. Why would we duplicate infrastructure or let a third party come in and monopolize it?
Yeah, there's a lot of different antennas going up out in Midland, right? Like trying to push out the same network. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're giving me ideas. Okay,
no,
cool.
I love it.
We'll go around.
It's pretty interesting. I've done a little bit of work in that space, and it's just wild how much duplication there truly is, right?
Yeah. All right, we'll turn the microphones off and we'll figure that one out.
That'll be our closed door convo. Okay, so favorite vacation spot, and just it sounds like you're fairly well traveled, but what's your favorite place that you've ever traveled to?
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, I gotta say my favorite vacation spot would be a place called Cook's Beach on the Coromandel in New Zealand. That's where my heart is. I absolutely love that. Spent a lot of time there growing up. It's just a beautiful beach. I go for that one. And then favorite place to visit that I've gone to that's not New Zealand. Man, I love Berlin. I think Berlin's the coolest town. So I'd go there many times. I'd love to go back.
That's awesome. Have you been during Oktoberfest or anything?
Well, I don't know if that's Berlin, but no, I haven't actually been there for Oktoberfest, and I don't know if I'm allowed to go there anymore. I got 2 kids and I'm starting a business. But no, man, just the richness. The cool thing about that town is you're really in history. You know what I mean? It's been around for 1,000 years, and everything's just so current. It's a cool place.
That's awesome.
I love it. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, where can people find you? How they get in touch if they want to reach out?
Best place to find me is on LinkedIn. Just search Cameron Sinclair. You'll find me there, or smartchainservices.com. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on, everybody. We will see y'all next time. Appreciate it.
Cheers.